Welcome back to Daytime Remembers. Earlier I mentioned that Remembrance Day is very much about symbols, the poppy, talking about being at the cenotaph, reading poems, but it really is about the stories, and there are a few stories more compelling than my next guest. John Harris, who served on the 419th Squadron, Royal Canadian Air Force, 1941 to 1945, and he joins me now. John, thank you so much for being here, first of all.
My pleasure.
And I want to go right back from the very beginning of your story to being a young man in the prime of his life. What was it that compelled you to enlist in the first place?
Well, I guess I first was tempted to enlist at the time of the fall of France, when Britain was left almost stranded, facing lots of difficulties. The Italians had just joined Hitler, and I thought, well, it looks as though they're going to need all the resources they can get. So that was about 1940. And when I went down to the recruiting center, it was so crowded, I thought, well, I'll come back when things won't be so hectic. So it was actually 1941 before I finally felt the time was right. So I applied for air crew and was accepted and went through a pretty rigorous course of training, initial training, and from there to Air Observer School. And we went to initial training, and they decided then whether you were going to be a pilot or a navigator. And apparently I was the only one ever ground looped a link trainer.
Not a good thing.
No. And I was getting good marks in the maths and what was one of the other subjects of navigation. So they said, there's no choice where you're concerned. You're going out to train as a navigator.
You were a natural-born navigator.
Just about everybody wanted to be a pilot, but one of the glamour boys. But
so you found yourself as a navigator, flying bombing runs over German territory.
Well, we did one over Italy. We bombed when it was a clear moonlit night. That was trouble for Bomber Command. We'd lose a lot of planes. So they sent us on one night just to Milan. But that was an interesting raid too, because the Yak knocked out one of our motors. We had to fly all the way back across France on 3 engines. And for some strange reason, we didn't go as fast, but we used more petrol. But we got all the way back to England, but the pilot said, we're not going to make it. We were way up, actually north of Yorkshire in County Durham. He said, where would you like to, where should we land? And I said, well, maybe let's land at our old OTU where we had done our preparation training. So we surprised them all there. Well, I used a new instrument that we just received, and I homed in on Honeybourne, which was the station in question. And as we came, we had been there for some time. As we were coming in to landing, the rest of the crew said, this isn't Honeybourne, this isn't Honeybourne. I said, well, the pilot said, well, we got to land here anyway. We're really down low. And as we came in to land, the air control said, this is Honeybourne. And what had happened is they changed the pattern of lights. See, we always operated at night on the flare path.
Still, that must have been a terrifying experience, not sure where you were landing.
Where did I slip up? And I knew the rest of the crew were kind of disappointed that I hadn't got back to where I was supposed to, but I had.
Obviously one of your most notable missions was the raid over Mannheim.
Oh, the one in which I was shot down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It wasn't my aviation fault. We were on our bombing run. And at that point, the bomb aimer replaces me down in the nose, and he directs the pilot on the aiming point. And it's right, left, and you hear it coming through the intercom, and then bombs away. You don't have to be told, because you can feel a plane sort of lifting itself up as the bomb load's delivered. But we never quite got to that point. We were, as I say, on the bombing run, and there was a sudden jolt, and I'd never felt anything like that before, and the plane started to quiver and shake, and then the pilot's voice came over the intercom. You Australian, bile out, lads, bile out. He was supposed to say abandoned aircraft. We didn't tell him, so I didn't argue. As a navigator, it was made relatively easy for me to abandon the aircraft because the escape hatch was under my seat, and when I folded my seat back, like a classroom seat, there was stowed my parachute. And of course, I had thought many times how would the drill I would go through. So I reached down, pulled out the parachute, was hooking it at one. I hooked on one side, and I was hooking at the other one. The plane went absolutely wild, out of control, bouncing around, and I thought that was the end of the road for me.
You know, John, your story is so compelling. I want to ask you about your book too, because the whole story is contained within your book. How can we get a copy of your book if we want to know the whole story?
Well, the bookstores used to carry it, but they haven't for a while. But if anybody wants it desperately enough, I do have a supply at Masonville Manor, where I live.
Beautiful. On this day, on Remembrance Day, who do your thoughts turn to?
Oh, the 6 lads that I flew with. They were, you know, when you face death night after night, we're the same band of boys. And man, because one had lied about his age, he was over I think it was 30, was the maximum age for aircrew. Very, very rigorous standards of health. And oh yeah, we got to be, not all crews got that sort of bond, but we would go to social functions together, the local pub. The tail gunner had a sweetheart at one of the local inns, and we'd all go there, the whole crew of us. And at the time, gentlemen time, the customers were supposed to leave, and we'd all stay behind and help clean up in the automatic dishwashers and have an awful lot of glasses at the pub. So things like that really bonded us together. And,
well, John, thank you so much for your service, and thank you for taking the time to join us today.
oh, you're welcome.
John Harris.